We're starting our trip up in Boston, and we'll continue on down to New York, and then to Philadelphia, and eventually Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. We're starting in Boston and heading down to New York by train. We'll have 5 days in Manhattan, and then going down to Philadelphia, and from there we're going down to Washington, D.C. for 4 days. So we're getting a grand sweep of the East Coast. We're going to be visiting this beautiful city in New England. It's the capital of Massachusetts, and it's really one of the loveliest cities in America to visit. There's so many attractions for the tourists. There's the historic city, there's the modern city, and there's shops and there's restaurants. And we're going to show you up and down the town, and plus we're going to be taking a trip out into the countryside to see the beautiful fall foliage. We're traveling during the month of October. A great time to visit New England. Boston's a city of neighborhoods. There's a mosaic of Old Town, New Town. There's the new buildings of the financial center, modern bank glass skyscrapers. There's the historic, charming streets of Beacon Hill. There's the 19th century well-planned neighborhood of Back Bay. And then there's the rest of the city, all put together forming a real attractive place to visit. The Boston Public Garden is a real oasis, 24 acres of beautifully landscaped trees and flower beds, and with the pond in the middle. You'll notice the leaves are turning color because we've timed our tour to coincide with the peak of the fall season. There's Trinity Church, and next to it is the Hancock Tower, designed by I.M. Pei. The Museum of Fine Arts is housed in a lovely neoclassical structure. It looks like it's from ancient Athens. We get to the most popular gathering spot in the heart of town. It's Quincy Market, surrounded by shops and restaurants. It's a great spot to be. Inside Quincy Market, you'll find nearly 40 different shops and stalls selling a tremendous variety of foods. And outside, you can sit at a cafe and have a complete meal, or just a light snack and a drink and dessert. This is a great city. It's similar to San Francisco in size and in feeling. The most historic and the most expensive residential neighborhood in the city is Beacon Hill. It's a fine example of urban planning, and it goes back several hundred years. And find your way to Acorn Street, so historic, in the midst of a great modern city, a city on the move. And we're on the move now as well. We're going on to our next city on the tour, New York, and then to Philadelphia, and eventually Washington, D.C. Now it's time to head down the Atlantic coastline, just a few hours by a comfortable Amtrak train, arriving at the biggest city in America, one of the great cities of the world, New York City. We'll be staying in 57th Street at the Wellington Hotel. Very comfortable and convenient location. While we're here, we're going to be looking at the architecture of the city. We'll be enjoying some of the restaurants. We'll take some walks. Taking a walk right in the heart of Midtown Manhattan. That's always a great activity in New York City, is just walking around. This is just the city for walking. Next morning, we board our bus for the open-top tour of the Big Apple. It's a fun way to get around town, and we certainly include that as part of our itinerary of the tour of New York. And it shows us some of the highlights of Uptown and Times Square here, Midtown, and we'll go downtown on our city tour as well. Heading down south into Greenwich Village as we head down through Soho. The Empire State Building was the tallest building in the world when it was constructed. On our tour, we stay in New York for 5 nights, which gives us 4 complete days to have a really detailed look around. And one of the sites that we sure don't want to miss is Central Park, an oasis of greenery in the midst of the canyons of Manhattan. Back at Midtown, crossing 5th Avenue, Madison Avenue, there's sidewalk cafes here on the Upper East Side. This is the elegant neighborhood where a lot of very affluent people live. Very exclusive townhouses. Park Avenue, a mix of residential and commercial spaces. And now we're on Madison Avenue, one of my favorite walks in New York. great center of learning, the New York Public Library. And behind it is Bryant Park, which has really been cleaned up in the last 10 years. An amazing transformation has taken place at Bryant Park. At lunch, it's popular for picnics, and evening you can have dinner on the terrace. So now we're looking up Broad Street, and you can actually see the New York Stock Exchange from here with the flags and the triangular pediment. It looks like a Greek temple. We're going to catch the ferry boat out to the Statue of Liberty, the great symbol of freedom and the symbol of America. Philadelphia is our next stop. We're now entering the most historic square mile in America. Independence Hall in Philadelphia behind me is where America began, for it was here that it was first declared that America should be free and independent from Great Britain. This was the intellectual, political, economic center of the country at that time, and it's where the Continental Congress met, and all of the great luminaries came together and declared our independence. One of the main reasons that we've come to Philadelphia is to see American history come to life again. And at Independence National Park, you get the wonderful experience of walking through these buildings that are over 200 years old and hearing informative talks from the different park rangers about what was going on and the events leading up to the Revolution and the Declaration of Independence. By 1780, Philadelphia was the largest city in North America, and by 1790 it became the capital of the United States. Just south of Independence Park, you'll find the largest collection of colonial houses in America. We're in Society Hill. Society Hill today is beautifully preserved. It has a mix of shops, and there's some cafes and little restaurants. Mostly it's a residential neighborhood. Parts of Philadelphia have gone up, up, up. This is the highest building in town. Parts of Philadelphia are ancient. Nearby you'll find Rittenhouse Square, one of the 4 main squares in the central city. For now, we're leaving town and going to Atlantic City, the gambler's heaven on the East Coast. It's like a mini Las Vegas. They've got a convention center. They've got a number of brand new hotels and casinos, of course. There's Follies, there's Caesars. Trump has got a whole bunch of hotels here at Atlantic City. But you don't even have to gamble to have fun in Atlantic City. It's just a nice place to visit. We're going to Lancaster County and visit the home of the Amish, a really, really fascinating group of people. It's a remarkable sight to see the horse-drawn plow. The Amish don't believe in gasoline-powered engines, and so they lead a much more simple life here.
They do not want their children to have radio, television, stereo, computers, or computer games. They say those things are not conducive to a healthy family life. And the Amish want to keep everything close to home, and they want to keep it family-centered. And the Amish still think the farm is the best way to raise a family. They consider farming to be the best occupation. This is the most productive farmland in the United States, which is not irrigated.
And yet they host a beautiful shop that we really enjoyed visiting as we travel from Philadelphia on down to our next stop on the tour, which is Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is not only our political capital, it's one of the great cultural centers of the world. It's a lot more than just a collection of monumental buildings and statues. Washington is a city of fine arts, incredible architecture, great food, interesting walks, fascinating neighborhoods. All in all, it makes a terrific place to visit. And on this trip, we stay in Washington for 4 nights. There's that much to do and see. And one of the great attractions of the city is the museums on the mall, the Air and Space Museum, the Smithsonian, the art galleries, the history museums. It's just the greatest collection of museums that you can find any place in the world. Well, there are many monuments in Washington, D.C., but it's generally considered that the triumvirate of the top 3 are the Washington, the Lincoln, and the Jefferson monuments. The Vietnam Memorial is even more beautiful with this backdrop of orange and red and yellow leaves on the trees. The Washington Monument, of course, always towers over the city, the eternal flame at the grave of Kennedy in Arlington, the National Cemetery across the river. And of course, the largest and most impressive of all the buildings in Washington is the U.S. Capitol Building.